Danny. So that's great. And thanks for participating in this. Can you hear me?
Hi, Bernie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I
You
can hear
can
you.
hear me? Yep,
I can hear
fantastic.
you. Yep.
Yeah, great. Well,
Yep.
thanks, Danny, for doing this for us and just having a little look at your life as a photographer.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what I thought we'd do is just go through a little bit of your checkered history and how you created a really successful business in a few short years. So let's just go through a little bit about where we started. And I'll just try and get these slides up here. Of course, there's always glitches, right? Um, just got a
Of course.
photograph. Just got a photograph of you that you may recognize.
Oh, yeah. That's me a long, long time ago when I used to have hair. And I actually don't have any grey hairs there either.
How old were you then?
Oh, geez. That was 25 years ago. So that's how long it was ago. So I can't even remember. I think I would have been about 20, 21, 22.
21. So at 21, you were
Yeah.
working for the water board. You were in Wollongong.
Yep, correct. I was living in Wollongong working for the water board, and one day one of my guys that worked with me sort of come up to me and said, Danny, can you please slow down? And I sort of looked at him. I said, why? And he said, because you make us look so bad. And I think it was that day that I realised the water board was no longer for me, and I had better and bigger places to go to.
And you had a love of photography. You used to photograph for the local photographer who used to pay you $100 to photograph a wedding on a Saturday. Was that right?
That's exactly what I did. Yeah, I just got into photography at a very early age, just for fun. And I ended up buying a camera very cheaply from the local newspaper. They somehow every couple of years sell off their equipment.
Hmm.
And I started, yeah, just photographing my brother's wedding. And, well, basically, when I say photographing it, I was the sidekick of photographing the wedding, and I pretty well buggered every photo up because I had the wrong settings on the camera. And from that day, I realised that I just wanted to make sure or become a better photographer, and I started working for another photographer,
Okay,
photographing weddings on weekends.
and you used to shoot 35 millimeter film.
All 35mm film, yeah. It was all 35. It was a Nikon FM camera.
Okay, and so you were sort of running a business on the side a little bit too, weren't you? Were you promoting a
Right.
photography business, or you started to do that?
Yeah, no, as I started sort of, people started asking me to photograph their weddings, and I remember the first actual wedding I photographed, I was paid $40, and I was still working for the water board at that stage. And after that wedding, they paid me $40. I then went and did a set of proofs and everything, and they took the photos home. And in those days, I actually still hung on to the negatives, and well, actually, I did through my whole career.
Yeah.
And then they actually come back with an order, and the order was like $600 in reorders
Wow.
for the actual photos. And that's when I sort of went, wow, it's not just how much I charged to photograph the wedding, it was actually the reorders. And I think back then I charged $1.50 for a 6x4, and it used to cost me about 12 cents to actually print that
Mm.
6x4. And so that's where I sort of realised where a lot of the money was.
So you started promoting to run a business.
Yeah, and then I basically was doing a little bit of work on the side at the waterboard, and one day my boss walked and looked at my desk and noticed that everything didn't revolve around my job. It all revolved around photography. And he sort of gave me the hint, I think you should get out of here. And so they basically actually gave me a redundancy payout, and I left the waterboard.
Yeah. So you set up, you went into partnership with a video guy.
Yeah, my cousin and I, we were just very, very close, and we just were chatting, and he was already doing some video work with me, and we basically both resigned from our jobs, and he got a redundancy, I got a redundancy. I ended up buying a property in Wollongong to completely renovate
Yeah.
and open up our studio back then, which was called Elite Photography, and he did the videos and I did the photos.
And that's
And
the
that was the
building
beginning.
there. And there's the building there.
Yeah, there's the building there. That's the one. We actually took 3 or 4 months to renovate it, and that was. I actually lived in the building as well. I lived at the back of the place, and we also had a studio there. We had 2 viewing rooms, and we had an office over to the left-hand side there. So I actually used all my redundancy money on actually renovating the property. So I
Now,
basically, when I started with nothing in the bank when I started that business.
so when you came in touch with me, was that before? That was before you opened this studio, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I met you in 1988. We actually opened the studio, actually October 1988. We opened the studio June 1989.
So I did a seminar down in Wollongong there, and from that day on, you never left me asking questions and learning about photography and learning about sales. Um, One of the things we did a shoot in Wollongong, and we went up a hill there, and there were a lot of houses, and I asked how much were the houses, and your reply was,
$1 million.
and I said,
That was
well,
up in the Balgownie Hills.
so I said, well, who's photographing the weddings and who's photographing the portrait of the people up there? And you said, I don't know. And the thing was that I noticed that there was a lot of money around, but the other photographers there didn't. As an outsider, I looked for the positives, and everyone was giving me the negatives. They were saying, oh, there's no money in Wollongong. Photographers were charging $300 to photograph a wedding.
I'm losing your bit here,
Yep,
Bernie.
that's all right. BHP was closing down. So yeah, so it was all negative, but I saw the positives and you saw the positives, so you sort of just kept going.
Well, what my big turning point for me was your first day, the very first day that we did the seminar, and I think I was charging around about $500 or maybe even less than that. I think it was $250 to photograph a wedding, and your first day of the seminar sort of made me realize that I could be charging a lot more, because I was, my worth is, within my own brain is what am I worth? So
Yeah.
anyway, I went home that night and I said to my girlfriend at the time and her family, I said, I'm going to leave the waterboard and I'm going to charge $1,000 to photograph a wedding. And they in fact all laughed at me. They pretty well kicked me out of the house and said, you're an absolute idiot. Then the second day of your seminar, are you, can you hear me, Ben?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yep.
Hello.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
You're
Well,
experiencing technical difficulties.
yeah, it's all
Bernie.
right. Keep going. We should be right.
Yeah, it's saying here that, yeah, you've got me again.
Yep. Yep.
And on the second day of the seminar was when I completely twitched that everything you were saying to me and everything that had meaning in life was, yeah, people can afford whatever I charge and whatever they wanted to pay. It was basically my brain or my mentality that brought me back to this level of charging what I was charging.
Yeah.
And that unless you were the person who changed my whole attitude, because everyone around me, like my family, completely had a different attitude to what you were sort of teaching me.
Yep.
And I think once I turned that attitude around is when my business just basically took off, and I left work. I left my job and went full-time into photography.
Yep. That's terrific. And I'll keep working with these slides, which have decided not to work now as well. So that's going well so far. But we'll catch up to the slides. So you opened the studio in Wollongong. You promoted. You marketed like crazy. You even put on a marketing person. You did bridal fairs. You did everything you felt you needed to do to get your business going.
We did.
Yeah, I'll just get back to the slides if I can, if it'll let me.
That's all right.
It's just the internet connection and this. You managed to
Yeah.
buy a Porsche there.
Yeah, I actually, when I was in Wollongong in the studio, we actually, in 1989, we nabbed a really great celebrity wedding, which was Wayne
Wayne
Gardner.
Gardner. Yep.
Yeah, that was a massive wedding. Even a couple of weeks before the wedding, they were actually going to pull out and not employ me because they sort of said to me, well, we're getting somebody to do it for free. And I certainly wasn't going to do that. But anyway, we ended up negotiating and they've ended up coming back to me to photograph the wedding. And I think that was just a massive confidence boost to me personally, to my business. And so, yeah, one day I was just driving through Sydney and I saw this, dream car of mine, which was the Porsche, and I ended up buying it. So it was literally, I think, 2 days after Wayne Gardner's wedding that I actually bought that Porsche.
Yeah, well, that's terrific. And I remember that wedding well because you're always phoning me up and saying, "Oh, I've got the lighting and I don't know what to do," and you were a bit in a panic, but we got through there. You had a great album sale. You bought a 3-album set. But some of the things we said, well, he's paying $1,000 for an ice sculptor at his weddings, which is going to melt. So, we felt that he could afford to pay the high price.
Correct. So that's why we didn't end up, giving him a discount or doing any of this kind of rubbish that they were talking about. And I think they respected that, and that was great because, that's what we ended up getting from, both of them, Wayne and his wife. We got respect from them, and we did a great job on the day.
Yeah, so you within a year or two, you were too big for Wollongong. Your sights were a lot higher than a small town, so you decided to move to Sydney.
We very quickly outgrew Wollongong, so quickly. As soon as I had my sights on Sydney, which was in 1991, so we only had been going from 1989 to 1991 in Sydney, in Wollongong, and then we chose a location in Sydney, which was in Drummoyne. And we picked up a little shop front. It was quite cheap rent. It wasn't too expensive. And yeah, well, that was the beginning, basically, of our, sort of massive studio that we sort of created in Sydney. But it was only a small studio. We took another 3 months to renovate this studio. And I remember it had a little back room, and I used to actually have a mattress and sleep on the floor 2 or 3 nights a week, in that place. But that's where sort of our business started for Sydney.
And that's where it started. And then there was a second studio came along.
Yeah, then we were there for about 12 months in that small studio, and then basically that was at 104 Victoria Road, and then at 100, so it was only 2 doors down, we found a much larger double-story place where it was completely had to renovate again, so it took us about 6 months to renovate that studio. And we completely turned the place upside down, putting new wood floors through, putting a whole new kitchen in, updated the bathroom. So we spent a fair bit of money on the place, but it was the forefront of studios in those days back then. It was a leading edge.
And as I look at the photographs on the wall there, something that you used to do, I noticed that there's specifically shoots that you did for display for the studio walls.
Correct. We did many shoots.
And that gave you, sensational photos that you could put on your walls to show people what you were capable of rather than day-to-day work.
Correct. And they were actually very good-looking people, and people relate to in photography. They relate to very good-looking people. So not that every one of our clients weren't good-looking, but it does help to have, a very good-looking couple. So we did many a shoot that we went out all around Sydney, finding different locations that we could work with, and we would shoot for a whole day. You know, a typical wedding, you know, might be an hour or two in the park, but when we went and did a shoot, we could actually shoot all day long from 9 in the morning till literally 9 at night. So it just gave us the opportunity.
And looking at this, and of course you used to do a lot of promotions via bridal fairs, and as I look at those photographs on the walls, I see that all of those photographs are shoots, or
most of them are all
yeah,
shoots.
Yeah.
Most of them are all shoots, because they were the best photos we ever got, because we had the time and, you know, sort of the ability and to, you know, sort of create what we were sort of creating, and that is, you know, a sort of like a fashion type of photography where people could look at it and relate to it, and everyone seemed to exactly do that. But when we do bridal fairs back then, we were doing bridal fairs. We were not just, you know, walking in with 4 or 5 photographs and stick them up on the walls.
Yeah.
We were spending thousands upon thousands, you know, displaying our works and bringing in furniture and renting floors and renting walls, and, you know, we were just spending a lot of money on our promoting.
And typical of the way you used to think, you said, well, they're charging us for floor space but not for air space, so you decided to put a big banner up above your stand, which, you know, they didn't charge you extra for, but you got extra exposure.
Exactly right. Wherever I could save some money on or get an idea on or something like that. And this is why I said, you know, to you yesterday about displaying on a billboard with a truck out the front of the bridal fair in the street of Sydney. I actually had a billboard going around on the back of a truck, because I knew there'd be 10,000 brides and grooms coming, you know, which were, you know, a needle in the haystack. Well, there's the needle. I found it because they're all coming to this bridal fair. So I would actually put a billboard on the back of a truck and park it out the front and go around the streets of Sydney for that whole day, because I knew all those bride and grooms would see me outside and inside.
And you're going to actually tell me you drove the truck?
No, I didn't drive the
You
truck.
got someone to drive the truck.
I did actually, yeah.
And
I was living in America at that time when this was going on.
And it was also interesting that you did a similar thing when you had a boat in Darling Harbour. You put a big display up when the expo was in Darling Harbour.
That's exactly what I did, because at Darling Harbour, everyone accesses Darling Harbour usually via walkways and from the city, so they would always have to walk past where all the boats are. So I ended up parking my boat, putting a whole lot of photographs on the boat, and so promoting. It was all about promoting, and I didn't pay for anything for it. All
about marketing, promoting. So let's have a little look at your style of photography. It obviously improved. This particular one is a shoot, and it's just amazingly different. And this is another shoot on Bondi Beach, which again...
Actually, that's a real wedding there, Bernie.
Oh, is it? Was that the wedding?
Yeah, was though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did photos. They actually had a photographer photograph their wedding, and they were so upset that they ended up calling us and saying, look, can you just please go and do a shoot with us, because we just, you know, we want some great photos. So we ended up doing this shoot on a Tuesday during the week, and it was just one of the best shoots I've ever had. It was just fantastic. And
this is the area of cross-processing using slide film, which was processed in C41 chemicals, which gave this really vibrant color. This is medium format shooting Hasselblad.
Yes, correct. That was in Vegas.
So you've shot some weddings in Vegas as well as San Francisco. Yeah. That would be in San Francisco, is it?
That was actually San Francisco, in the Westin St. Francis, one of the most expensive hotels in San Francisco. Yeah, no, we've been all over, a lot of weddings all over America, in Iowa, in New York. So we've done some great places.
So then you bought a building.
Yeah, we ended up, at the end of the day, you know, my landlord kept putting the rent up every year, so we just sort of got to the point of saying, you know, what are we doing this for? Let's just buy our own building. So we ended up buying a building at 100 Victoria Road.
Hmm.
So we went from 104 to 106 to 100 Victoria Road because we knew the location we chose was brilliant for where we wanted to be, and the types of clients we were attracting from the area is exactly what we wanted.
Yep. Yep, that's great. And of course, with the building, you had great exposure, totally renovated, and come Christmas time, you used to dress it up a little bit.
Yeah, well, that was just to get people talking because that was the whole point of having a shop front was basically everyone talked, and you can see in that photo there with the bell out the front that there's 4 or 5 guys in the front of the Ferrari that I used to drive, and they all had their pants down with their Christmas boxer shorts on. So I thought, well, that'd be just a perfect photo to put in the front window at Christmas time. And because that's what people did. People talked. Every time they drove past my studio, they saw something new and something different. And
Yeah.
we used to have a queue at the studio that every 3 days we changed the photographs in the studio. We changed them around with new stuff. So every day people drove past will actually recognize a new photo that they haven't seen before.
And this is a big building. You'd got an office. You'd got you didn't have a studio as such. You never photographed in a studio situation. Your photography was always done outside.
Yeah, we had a backyard, beautiful backyard anyway, so we never ended up, I never really liked to do indoor studio stuff with studio lighting. I never enjoyed it. I really enjoyed natural light. I pretty well, after Wollongong, because Wollongong actually did have a studio, I think it was 1,000 portraits I did in 1 year. And I think after that 1,000 portraits, I just sort of went, wow, I'm done. I just cannot do this anymore. And hence, when we moved to Sydney, we no longer would actually have an indoor studio. We basically just went out to the parks, or went to people's homes, went down by the water because Drummoyne's right on the, cup of Sydney Harbour, so we would just go down to the water's edge and take photos. It'll all be natural light.
Just having a look at some of your photographs, they were just a mix of everything, weren't they? They were fun, they were romantic, artistic. I remember this particular shoot that we did in Sydney, and that's a
Sorry,
fantastic.
mate, I couldn't hear you.
Yep, this is a particular shoot you did in Sydney. Yep, you still got me. We'll keep going with the photos anyway.
So, sorry, Bernie, you're actually not coming across too well. I can't actually hear. I can hear you, but that's better. I can just hear you.
It's all right, it's coming and going. But I'll just go through the photos. Have you got me now?
I'm just not getting it, Bernie. I can't.
Have you got me now?
Hello?
Yep, you got me now. We may keep going.
I can't hear you talking, but I can't hear you.
I think it's back now, is it?
Oh, yeah, it's just coming back now.
Okay, talk us through the Ferrari. This was your first one.
Yeah, no, I'll never forget one of my dream cars was not just the Porsche, but it was actually a Ferrari. And it was just the dream car of my life. And I remember walking into the Ferrari showroom in Sydney and walked in there ready to buy one, and I was talking to the guy and he just looked at me and I said, right, I need to go for a test drive now so I can make sure I like the car. And he said, I'm sorry, but we only do test drives on a Saturday. And I said, well, I work on a Saturday. In fact, I'm a wedding photographer. It's the only day I work. And he said, well, looks like you won't be getting to drive a Ferrari. So I ended up sort of putting my head between my legs and walking out of there and thinking, I just can't believe this. How can this be happening? So I ended up ringing Melbourne, and I told them over the phone that I'd like to buy a Ferrari. Exactly the one that I wanted was the 328. and I wanted it to be red. But anyway, I flew down there, and the guy's, showing me this Ferrari, but it was blue. And we went for a test run and absolutely fell in love with it. And I said, right, I want to buy it. And then I remember ringing you, Bernie, and I said, Bernie, I've got this car. It's a Ferrari, but it's blue. And the first thing you said is, no way, you cannot buy a blue Ferrari.
Well, that's
So
true.
I ended up flying. Yeah, I definitely remember. In fact, I was even looking at respraying the whole car red. Even the dealer was telling me, oh, look, we can get it resprayed for you for
Yeah,
about
right.
$14,000. So anyway, I went back home, and anyway, it was only 2 days later that the Melbourne guy rang me and said, look, I've got a car. It's in Sydney. I'm coming up now to bring it to you. And he brought it by, and, yeah, we basically bought that Ferrari and absolutely loved it. It was a great car.
Sensational.
And, we used it for many shoots. We went on many weddings. We obviously took it on weddings. People, especially my clientele, loved it. They always wanted to have photographs with it, and it was basically a very good talking point because
Yeah.
you turn up to a wedding in a Ferrari. The first thing all the guests say is, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
And that's promoting. That was my promotion, and that was again. I sort of paid for it through the Ferrari, but I didn't really have to pay for them to go, well, that's Dekker Photography. That's Danny Dekker.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of what it brought me.
Well, just quickly to your second Ferrari, because you sold that one and upgraded, and you
Yes, I
bought this
did.
one.
Yes, I did. This was my dream car. This was just absolutely beautiful. It was the 355, and I just wanted to update again. It was just one of those, the old Ferrari. I've had it for a couple of years now, and now it's time to update. I actually had both Ferraris. I actually bought this one before I sold the other one, and I'll never forget when I sold the other one. You were actually at my studio when I was looking at this guy who bought it, and it was pouring down with rain. And he hopped in, this Ferrari that he just bought from me, and it was leaking like a sieve. Like, roofs, Ferraris are definitely not waterproof inside. And he rode away with a towel, wiping down everything inside because it was just leaked like a sieve. But this 555 Spider was just an absolute beautiful car. It actually had flames come out of the back of it. And I think that was my purpose for buying it. It was just an absolute...
Yes, I remember you taking it for a test drive, and I could hear it, 5 streets away screaming, but I didn't understand the original number plate was F111, wasn't it?
Yes, correct. Exactly.
And you changed
the guy
it to DD.
To DD. Yes, correct.
Well, I would have left it actually to F111.
Yeah.
But
it was a nice number plate.
Yeah. So let's have a look at some more of your images. And then you bought a boat. This is probably the second boat, is it? I won't dwell on this because we'll
I've
look
been
at
through a few boats. This is actually my third boat. This is when we actually lived on this boat for 12 months.
Yeah.
That was my second boat.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the one that was in Darling Harbour with all the photos over it.
So with your boats, you really did have a great business. You were able to have 3 months off during the year and used to cruise around the Whitsundays.
Yeah, we used to every June, July, August. We basically, experience told us that no matter what we do or how hard we try, we will not get bookings during the winter. So June, July, August, it just never ever happened. So we just thought to ourselves, well, what are we going to do? We're just going to, do portraits. But even then, portraits is very, very hard to get families out on a really winter's cold, days. So we just sort of went, let's just have the staff run the studio, and we're going to go up to the Whitsundays and live on the boat for 3 months. And that's exactly what we did.
That's what you did. So let's talk about San Francisco. Sydney wasn't big enough either, so you had your Sydney studio running successfully. You popped over to America. You had a look at New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, trying to pick a place where you wanted to open a studio. You decided on San Francisco.
Yes, correct. It really comes with a story, that whole American trip that I did. I was actually photographing a wedding in the middle of Sydney, and I had the Ferrari there, and this lady come up to me in the middle of Sydney who was actually a guest at the wedding, and she said, man, who are you? And I said, I'm just Danny Dekker, the wedding photographer. She went, man, you don't belong here. I said, what do you mean? She said, you belong in America. Anyway, at the reception, I went up to her and I started chatting with her, and I said, what do you mean? She said, look, a guy like you, the style of photography you do, everything about you, you belong in America. And I said, well, where? You know, where would I start? She said, look, I live in San Francisco. You come over to San Francisco and I'll show you the town. And that's exactly what we did. About 3 months later, my ex-fiance and I, we basically got on a plane and went to San Francisco, and we stayed there for 2 weeks, and this lady just showed us around and showed us San Francisco, showed us all the photographers, showed us, you know, just around town.
Yep, great.
And then, yeah, that was, I think, in December. And then the following year, instead of going on the boat for 3 months up to the Whitsundays, we decided to go to America for 3 months and live in America for 3 months. So we chose San Francisco to live. And while we were living in San Francisco, we then traveled all around America. We went everywhere to see whether there was a better location to open up a studio. And so after that 3 months, we decided that San Francisco was the best town to open up a studio.
And you opened up the studio, which was one room.
It was one room in a building.
And that's just the room above that other
Correct.
part of the building. It's just the room at the top there.
Correct.
And
very small studio.
And very hard for you to start again, because you actually started again. And this is the room. It's one room. You could, what would it be, about 4 meters or something?
Oh yeah, it was small. I mean, you can see, you know, the album plans that we used to do was just on that little wooden bench there. It was a very, very small studio, but we did extremely well from that little studio.
And it was very hard, yeah. It was hard for you to promote.
It was very hard.
Yeah, and this is one of your early promotions was on a street stall stand somewhere. What was this?
Correct. In America in the summer, well, in San Francisco, they do actually street fairs where they do it over a weekend on a Saturday and a Sunday. And they do street fairs in every street, but not on every weekend, so it's separated over the 3 months. So we ended up doing this street fair. And again, while doing these street fairs or doing any bridal fairs, we never really picked up work then and there. We never ever booked a wedding at any bridal fairs.
Mm-hmm.
What it was, though, it was just branding. It was just so people would actually brand me and just walk up to me and remember, Dekker Photography, didn't I see you at the street fair a couple of weeks ago? And that's all I wanted from it, and that's exactly what we got from it.
Yeah, so it was pretty hard work and pretty lonely for you to, because you man that stand yourself.
Yes, correct.
So you were doing one thing you didn't like doing much, and that was meeting people and promoting your business. It was never one of not one of your strong points.
No, definitely not. No, I just loved the photographing side, and the after sales album planning and things like that is what I enjoyed the most.
So, but you had the determination to succeed, so you said, well, damn it, I'm going to have to do it.
Yep, I kept it going.
You kept it going. And
I think the turning point was here now, where the bridal fairs in America are totally different to the bridal fairs in Australia. First of all, they don't cost the $5,000, you know, like they do here in Australia.
Mm.
In America, they charge everyone the same price, but in Australia, they somehow, I don't know how they get away with it,
charge photographers more. Yeah.
But in America, I mean, these bridal fairs were costing me $900. You know, and I went and bought some doors from Home Depot. I just went and bought some normal doors from your home. I painted them white. I put little brackets on them to stick them together, and I used to and put some photos up. Now, this first bridal fair that we ever did in America, we basically didn't book on the day, but the following weekend we booked about 20 to 25 weddings from that first bridal fair. Now, every one of those couples were paying a $1,500 deposit. And I think it was after that weekend that I actually turned up to a Mercedes-Benz dealership and saw a beautiful convertible Mercedes, and I said, I'll have that, thank you. And I paid him, wrote out a check and paid him for that for that car. And I'll never forget it from that one bridal fair. It was incredible. Their bridal fairs over there were just amazing.
So this is San Francisco, and you went from strength to strength, still operating the studio in Sydney, which
Yes.
you had staff looking after, and you had wedding photographers shooting weddings for you, and you were sort of running the business in America and flying back and forth about how many times a year? A lot?
Yeah, I was doing 150,000 miles of flying per year, and I did that for 4 years. And basically, I mean, sometimes I would fly for 2 days. I would fly back to Australia. I'll never forget flying in on a Thursday from San Francisco to Sydney. I photographed a wedding and portraits on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday, I flew out of Sydney. I arrived in America on the same day because they're a day behind. Got off the plane in San Francisco. My assistant picked me up from the airport at 11 o'clock, and we drove to San Jose to photograph a wedding at 12 o'clock for that weekend. So
And
that was something I did, you know, it was incredible how many times things like that happened.
and you did have another girl shooting for you over there, and you flew me over, and I did a wedding or two for you as well.
Well, actually, I had Philippa, who had been a long-standing employee for a long time with me, and I actually flew her over to America in June, July, August, and we put her up in accommodation, and she lived there for 3 months because that was the maximum she was allowed to live there, and she photographed weddings for 3 months that she was there,
Yep.
and she did that for 3 or 4 years while we were in America.
So this
And yeah,
this is the
I flew
second.
you there too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember.
I remember, and we did. I assisted you in the Napa Valley with a wedding,
Yeah,
and after one, I'd
yeah.
photographed myself, and it was all amazing. But this is the small studio in San Francisco. You also flew me over, and I opened it for you, and it was very compact, very small.
Yes, but very, very viable. It was a great studio. We did fantastic business out of there. It was just, the sales were just astronomical. It was
Now,
just amazing
can I
business.
can I just ask you a couple of things about sales? Because you used to send me these text messages and that and whatever about your sales, and you couldn't believe it. I know you did a $25,000 album sale, and then where did it go from there? It just kept going up, didn't it?
Yeah, we actually did a $50,000 sale, which was one of our better ones. But averaging, you know, in America was around about 20 to 25,000 US.
Yeah,
And in those days, it was 50 cents in the dollar.
yeah. So
So you
that's
used to
pretty
bring your
good.
money back, and it would double. So it was pretty good. So it was very, very, very good. But in America, what actually happened, my personal fee, because I've always had a personal fee for me to
Yep,
photograph their weddings,
yep,
it basically doubled
yep.
because we were just booking so many weddings. You know, we were just, and our starting price started about 3,000, but most of them were booking in at the $8,000 level.
Yep.
And then on top of that, my fee, you know, brought it to the $10,000 level. So we just, you know, had to slow it down because I was just booking so many weddings, which was great. It was fantastic. But it just goes to show the market over there was just so buoyant. It was just so fantastic.
So much bigger.
They were looking for something different. Well, of course it's so much bigger. You know, it's 350 million people, but still, I only operated in San Francisco, and
Yep,
most of my work come from the Silicon Valley. You know,
yep.
I was always at San Jose. I was always down at Pleasanton. I was always, you know, down at Palo Alto doing, you know, big, big weddings. And you've been to a couple of those weddings with me,
Mm,
Bernie. I mean, they were huge weddings. These people
mm,
were spending $100,000 on their wedding,
mm.
you know, and, you know, just, you know, when it comes to photography, if they spent 20, it was just part of the whole wedding.
So, you know, we talk a lot about the newer generation wedding photographers, and I developed an album planning selling system that you followed from day one and took you all through Sydney and America, and this is why you got these great sales. What do you think is, you know, the future of wedding photography as people stop or don't know about album planning? Where do you think wedding photography will go nowadays?
Well, they need to know about the album planning. They need to know about after sales. They need to know this. If they don't know this, they're just left for dead behind. And I noticed many photographers that I met in America, and a few of them that actually did come to my studio, and I sat down and talked to them and showed them, some of my sales. They sort of looked at me in a strange way of, but how can they spend more? How can they spend more after? And I'm like, because you've got to give them the opportunity to spend more. If you don't give them that opportunity, they're not going to spend more. And I think that will never ever go. That will never ever stop. It will always be there. You've got to give what I call service, and your service is to supply not only photography, but an end product. And I hate seeing these days that people are just photographing weddings, giving them the files and walking away. I mean, that couple will never ever have a lasting album.
No.
It just won't be there. That they'll just get fallen behind. They'll start having babies. They'll start having families, and they'll never ever end up with an album. But I can contest with every single one of my clients have got a beautiful, magnificent album, from their wedding day.
Yeah, and one thing, especially, I've worked with you a lot. I've assisted you, and I remember the Napa Valley well because you sort of gave so much. I mean, you bled for the couple.
I did.
You bled.
I did.
And a few photos here just show how hard you would work, or what to get what you wanted. You would do anything. You'd climb up on, risk your life, I would call it, to get the photos that you wanted. And people appreciated that, when the passion that you put in was so intense, that they didn't mind in a lot of ways sort of passing over their money to you.
Well, I think that's a lot to do with, my personality on a sort of a wedding day. I used to walk in a room, when I used to go to the hotel or the bride's home, and the first thing you would see everyone say is, who's this guy? This guy is unbelievable. And that's because my personality just basically come out with, we're going to have a great day, this is going to be great, this is going to be fun, and got into shooting the wedding and in basically entertaining. I really entertained my clients, and that was probably one of the most important things that I picked up. People just don't laugh at a wedding day. People just don't smile. But if you help them to make them laugh, they'll laugh, and there's your photo. And I used to joke a lot, and I used to, do a lot of interaction with people. I wasn't that quiet photographer who sat in the corner. It's because I used to capture those laughs. When I used to tell a joke, I used to be photographing. And I remember teaching one of my other staff members to be a photographer. And I remember watching him say something funny to a client, but he wasn't pressing the button. They were laughing, but he wasn't pressing the button. So he lost the focus of why we're trying to be funny, why we're trying to make them laugh, why we're entertaining them. It was purely so we can photograph them in the best spontaneous way we could. Because as you know, Bernie, at a bride's home, brides don't laugh and smile through the whole time.
A lot of tension, yeah. There's a bit of tension.
A lot of pressure, a lot of tension.
So, Danny, just as we come to the close, can you give 5 tips to wedding photographers that would enhance their business?
Sure. One of my tips from from the beginning of photography was you've got to target your market. You've got to know which market you're going for. There's 3 different markets. There's the top market, which is what I call the 10,000 plus. Then there's the middle market, which is sort of $3,000 to $5,000 plus. And then there's the bottom market, which is about $1,000 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember meeting you back in 1988. You said to me, Danny, do you want to photograph 500 weddings for $500 a wedding? Or do you want to photograph 5 weddings at $50,000 a wedding? And I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I know what I want. So that's what I chose. I chose to photograph the top end of the market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing, is trying to choose what market you go for. The second thing is, I think one of very important, is know what you're worth and stick to it. Don't ever discount your product. So it's something I never ever did. whenever someone asked me how much, I gave them the price, and they go, well, can you do a discount? No, that's what I charge. That's how much it is. And I basically put that down to that's what I was worth. That's what people, would pay for me. So if you'd like to pay that, that's what I'm worth. So know what you're worth. The next thing going through, a long history of being a photographer was trying to come up with new ideas, trying to come up with something original. Stop. There is no originality out there. There's no original. Everything's copied. I copied from Gucci. I copied from Versace. I copied from Louis Vuitton. I didn't copy from Kmart or Big W or Target. I copied from where my market goes to shop. Mm-hmm. So I copied everything they did. From my albums, I used to put them in a beautiful box with embossing. That was copied from Louis Vuitton. All the ideas that I got from magazines, I used to get bogged down so much on trying to be original and trying to come up with an idea that no one's come up with. Forget it. Someone's already come up with that idea. Just copy it. Just grab a magazine and open it up. If you see a great ad in that magazine, just copy it. Just copy it and put your photos and change it around. I probably wouldn't copy it from another photographer, but I would copy it from another industry. So don't get bogged down on trying to be so original, because it doesn't exist. The next thing is branding. I think you've really got to brand yourself. You've got to brand your name, brand your product everywhere. TV, radio, shopping centres, schools, bridal fairs, billboards. Advertise, advertise, advertise. Even if, I'll never forget when I did a TV ad. It cost me a fortune, over $20,000. I'll never forget sitting there by the telephone waiting for it to ring. It didn't ring. It didn't ring. But what it did is 2 weeks later, it brought a couple into my showroom and they said, oh yeah, we're going to book. We happened to see your ad on TV a couple of weeks ago, but that's not why we're booking, but we just remember seeing your ad. Well, that just paid for my ad. That one booking, that one person. So it never comes straight away. It comes later, and that's what branding is. The fifth one, I call it the most important one, is you've got to have a mentor. You've got to have someone who you can, give you all the 25 years experience. When I met Bernie, that's how much experience he had. And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, Danny, what I've learned in 25 years, all the mistakes, I can teach you, and you can learn within 1 year. You can kill the 25 years of my experience, and you'll learn that in 1 year. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, I learned it in 6 months, and I pretty well surpassed my sales targets within the first 6 months of learning from Bernie. But having a mentor was what got me through. What got me through every single angle of my business was having the mentor to have there, ring up whenever I needed to phone him and say, look, this is where I've gone, this is what I've done, this is what I'm stuck with, can you help me through it? And Bernie had always been there. Every single moment he would always answer his phone. So I think a mentor is pretty well, the best thing you can sort of have in this photography business.
Okay, we've got a question from Lex. How much percentage roughly would you spend on advertising?
Look, when it comes to percentage, I never really sat down and work out percentages, but I can tell you how much I spent. I spent pretty well in excess of $80,000 to $100,000 a year in my advertising. If it went lower than that, I would sort of think, wow, no, I can go out and spend a little bit before the end of the financial year on advertising. So I don't have a percentage that I'd spend, but it was between $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
But you don't know what percent that was of turnover?
No, I couldn't tell you. No, I couldn't tell you what that percentage would be. I never really worked out sort of a percentage level. I think my advertising was just done on its merits while it was there in front of me. And that is, I advertised. I notice a lot of photographers these days think word of mouth will bring business to their door. I can tell you now, it won't. It will not. It will bring a small portion of your business, but if you want to be successful, it won't bring enough. You've got to advertise, advertise, advertise to get more.
So again, what advertising avenues do you think would be best nowadays? The same bridal fairs, or would you look at promoting weddings in a different way?
Look, I think bridal fairs are always there because it's that needle in a haystack. You've got to find the needle, and bride and grooms go to bridal fairs. That's where they go. That's what they want to suss out the market. I think that is still there, but the problem is at those bridal fairs, and I've been to a few of them, recently in the last couple of years, photographers don't stand out. You just look all the same. Everyone else has got the black. I think the bridal fairs supply black walls.
The front
so
runner,
everybody's got black walls.
Yeah.
There was no one who stood out who went, wow, who's this guy? And I think that's the difference. You can go to a bridal fair, but you've got to stand out. You've got to be the one that looks different. And you've got to spend money to make money. A big lesson I've learnt many, many years ago is why I bought Ferraris, to photograph, to take on my weddings, because I spent money to make money. Because people talked. People said, who's that? So I had to, buy an expensive car for people to go, who's that? Well, that's advertising. That's spending money. So you got to, spend money to make money.
Yeah. And so that was your target, of course, was to get that sort of clientele.
It was a very high-end clientele. However, believe you me, it was not the, I didn't go to many homes that were worth $20 million in Sydney. I mean, we didn't go to homes that were worth $5 million in Sydney. We went to homes that were worth probably between, $750 to $1 million.
Yeah.
It wasn't a $300,000 home, even though we did have, some clients with, had disposable income, but they didn't care where they lived. However, it's just very important to know that, my clients were not celebrities. They were far from it.
Would you
They were
advertise?
far from being celebrities. What they wanted.
Yep.
Sorry?
Yep. Would you advertise in bridal magazines?
We did. We advertised a lot in bridal magazines, and when I advertised in a bridal magazine,
Different.
full page,
Yep.
I went different. And I'll never forget, Bernie, when I, opened in America,
Yeah.
before I even put a name on a door, I actually advertised in Martha Stewart weddings.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, it was $25,000.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, what am I doing here? But, that one ad, that one advertisement, when I opened my doors and put my name up, a lady comes in, sits down, her mother was with her, she's booking, and she says, her mother goes, so are you sure about this? She said, Dad, she said, Mum, this guy was in Martha Stewart weddings. Of course, anyone that advertises in Martha Stewart weddings is fantastic.
Yeah.
My ad just paid for itself.
All right. So we'll have to go. Danny, I think that's been fantastic, and to everyone that's been listening, I hope it's been a good insight. There's some basic principles there that Danny's gone through, and can we sum up by saying that you're now you've retired since you were 40 years old or something? Yes,
I retired when I was 40 years old, and now I've got 3 lovely children that we look after, and I'm semi-retired. I still have some investments that I look after, which takes a bit of my time up, but I do spend a lot of time with my kids, and so hopefully in the next couple of years, when the kids are all basically a little bit more at high school and things like that, I might start getting back into some other avenue of working in the photography industry. I'm not sure.
You might become a photographer again.
Who knows?
Who knows? All right. Thanks, Danny. That was great.
No problems. It's a pleasure.
All right.
Good luck to you all.
Bye.